Singapore PM Loong has urged Myanmar's military to release civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi and other elected leaders and work out a peaceful way forward. If it doesn't do that, Mr. Lee says there is very little outsiders can do for the situation, which he calls an enormous tragic step back. He was speaking in an interview with BBC, the first time he's commented on affairs in Myanmar.
And then to arrest Aung San Suu Kyi as well as her ministers and the president, and charge them with walkie-talkie offenses and things like that. I don't think that's going to help solve the problem. So you really have to get back, release Aung San Suu Kyi, negotiate with her and her team, and work out a peaceful way forward for Myanmar. Outsiders have very little influence on this. You can ostracize them, you can condemn them, you can pass resolutions or not. But it really has very little influence on what the Myanmars will do. It had zero influence the last time round, and the only impact was, for lack of anybody willing to talk to them, they fell back on those people who were willing to talk to them, which was China and to some extent India. And it was an uncomfortable position for them. And well, but it did not cause them to decide, I must do what the Americans or the Europeans or even the other ASEAN countries would have preferred them to do.
While countries must express disapproval, Mr. Lee says the reality is that further action such as military intervention or sanctions is unlikely to change anything. Instead, it could do more harm.
I don't think it's a matter of economic considerations for benefit from trade with Myanmar. The volume of trade is very small for us and I think for many other countries. Question is, what can make a difference to them, and if you do impose sanctions, who will hurt? And it will not be the military or the generals who will hurt. It will be the Myanmar population who will hurt. You will deprive them of foods, of medicines, of essentials, of opportunities for education. How does that make things better? And to use lethal force against civilian unarmed demonstrators, I think, is just not acceptable. It's disastrous, not just internationally, but it's disastrous domestically, because it means that the civilians, everybody in Myanmar knows. You may try and squeeze down the internet, but this word news gets around and the Myanmar population knows who's on their side. I hope that wisdom will prevail as it did the last time, and the Tatmadaw will conclude that to go the military route does not lead anywhere, and they have to work out an arrangement with a civilian government which has been democratically elected.
Kanat Wantana Sombat from Chulalongkorn University's Institute of Asian Studies joins us live now. So anti-coup groups say that ASEAN is legitimizing the military government by meeting its representative. It's a strong statement.
Well, yes, the argument of the anti-coup group more or less raised the concern to ASEAN on this sensitive issue. And I think ASEAN would be very careful when it comes to the official statement as usual. And we saw it last, Wednesday after the meeting of the Indonesian Foreign Minister, Thai Foreign Minister, and the representative from Myanmar. After the meeting, we saw how the Indonesian Foreign Minister referred to representative from Myanmar. So since ASEAN is a consensus-based decision-making organization, I believe ASEAN will deal with this concern appropriately.
ASEAN has always believed in constructive engagement, as you alluded to. Can that work, though, in today's environment?
Still, I think, ASEAN will still believe in the constructive engagement. I see the internal pressure from Myanmar citizens play a very important role as never before. The global community put pressure on Myanmar. The US can put direct pressure on Myanmar and others who also have very high stakes like Japan, Korea, Singapore, or even Thailand. In Thailand, we have a proverb like, never chase anybody to the wall. They will fight back fiercely because there is no way out. So when military government facing resistance, both inside country and outside country, I think there should be a way out for them, and ASEAN could play, a good cop role.
But, ASEAN and the West, they do have some opposing views. The West calling for sanctions, ASEAN not so keen. So can the two groups work together?
Well, we must understand ASEAN as it is, because ASEAN was born in the 60s during the Cold War with their intention purely on regional security. So in the 90s, when we accept more members become ASEAN as today, Laos and Vietnam, they're communist country. Myanmar back then ruled by military regimes for more than 3 decades. So without the non-interference in each other's affair, ASEAN wouldn't become ASEAN today. So ASEAN, from my point of view, I think ASEAN can still play a very important role in Myanmar crisis, but not just like other organizations. And in fact, I believe the non-interference in one another of the so-called ASEAN norms will probably be a key to find the way out for Myanmar.
Okay, Mayor, thanks for talking to us this evening. Arkanat Wantana Sombat from Chulalongkorn University's Institute of Asian Studies.